Hello and welcome to Wildlife Buzz leadership series, where we talk to wildlife professionals, conservationists from all around the world, and learn from them how they are impacting the world. So today we are joined by Dr. Arthur Muneza, who is the East Africa coordinator at the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, where he leads research and conservation partnerships dedicated to securing the future of Maasai, Nubian, reticulated giraffes across East Africa. Arthur is originally from Rwanda, and having spent his formative years in Kenya, one of Africa's most biodiverse regions, his passion for wildlife ecology and conservation began early. With the support of GCF and its partners, he went on to complete both his master's and PhD at Michigan State University, where his research focused on the ecological and human-related factors influencing giraffe survival in East Africa. His work is with the diverse network of researchers, conservationists, local communities, and partner organizations to advance giraffe conservation initiatives across East Africa and beyond. Very excited to have him share his journey, his research, and the incredible work done to protect one of Africa's most iconic species. So let's welcome Arthur. Arthur, welcome to Wildlife Buzz. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you, Ravi, for the wonderful introduction. I'm doing well, and I'm obviously very excited to share my journey and also just the little we know about giraffes from the, lots and lots of work that we've done. But what we've still come to know is that there's still quite a lot of work to be done for giraffe conservation, and I'd be more than happy to share and hopefully inspire a few young people that will join us on this journey.
Excellent. And we did a very nice AMA Ask Me Anything session on Wildlife Buzz platform, and it generated a lot of interesting questions, and Dr. Arthur was kind enough to answer them patiently. So thanks for that. Dr. Arthur, before we talk about JCF, okay, Giraffe Conservation Foundation, I'm more interested to know about your background since your conservation journey began in Rwanda and Kenya. Um, was there a particular moment of or experience that made you or you were drawn into giraffe conservation, and how did it become your life's work?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a very interesting question. Yeah, so from many people who can tell by my last name, I'm originally from Rwanda. That's where I was born. But from a young age, I've spent most of my life in Kenya. So I see Kenya as my second home. Uh, so growing up in Kenya, I was a young Boy Scout. So I did spend a lot of time camping and living with young people in nature, learning about nature. And then when I went to university, I did an undergraduate degree in applied biology. So that's where my background started. And as part of this journey, I did an internship at the National Museum of the Nairobi National Museum, where I started learning about, ornithology and birds. And that opened really my door into what the challenges that conservationists are facing and what wildlife and what the challenges that wildlife is facing and what people are doing to sort of preserve wildlife. When I finished my bachelor's, I briefly worked for a tourism company, but I quickly knew that that wasn't really my calling. So I started looking at opportunities to study conservation and better understand the techniques and skills that people need to advance their careers in conservation. So I was lucky enough to get the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Scholarship, and that took me to Michigan State University, where I was mentored and worked with Dr. Robert Montgomery. So through that process, when I was applying for my master's, he asked me which species do I want to study and which specialization do I want to take. At the time, I really couldn't provide an answer to him because, I live in Kenya. There's lots of interesting wildlife. There's lots of charismatic species that I could study. Michigan State had large research footprint, so to speak, and I didn't know where to start. In those discussions, he came across a call for proposals to study giraffe skin disease, and he asked me whether I'd be interested in studying giraffe skin disease as a research topic for my master's. And I thought, oh, that's actually very interesting. What's going on with giraffes? What's this giraffe skin disease? How is it impacting their populations? Is it, fatal? Lots of these ideas started to come to mind. And so what we did, I started working with him on giraffe skin disease, just documenting what it is, looking at what NGOs are studying, which NGOs are studying giraffes out there, who are the prominent researchers. And that's how I got in touch with GCF and started working on giraffe skin disease, and they supported me. And from then on, I haven't looked back, because by joining this journey, I quickly realized that there are very few specialists, there are very few people studying giraffes, and there's actually a lot of work to be done. So from then on, it's just been a sort of expansion of my network and experiences, looking at who else can we partner with to do really interesting and impactful research on giraffe. So that's how it started, and that's how I got into this, and met many incredible people who are doing really interesting work to help protect giraffe and generate a lot of information that's really useful.
Excellent. Would love to know a little bit more, if you can explain the audience what is Giraffe Conservation Foundation, what is the vision, what are the kind of impact that they have done. Little bit about them would be great to know.
Okay, yeah. So the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, this is an NGO that was started in, I believe, 2009. That's when it was first started by Dr. Julian Fennessy and Steph Fennessy. They are the co-founders. So currently it's it was the first, and currently it's the only NGO that focuses on protecting giraffes in the wild by, advancing giraffe conservation. So it uses science to inform management and research. That's the main sort of driving engine, but it works on various aspects on giraffe conservation. So there are some core thematic areas that inform how we approach research. Since then, we've done quite a lot of work. So many people might not know that giraffe occur in 21 different African countries. Giraffe Conservation Foundation currently has partners across 19 of those 21 different African countries. So while I say that, it might seem like it's a very big NGO, it's actually a very small NGO, but has many partners that help increase the footprint. So we like to say that we're a small NGO that has a very big footprint, because we work in these many landscapes, but with the support of our partners. So really, partnerships are at the core of the work that we do. So by that, I mean, we are involved in developing conservation strategies. What conservation strategies are, these are tools that are used for conservation, where we bring together international and national and local stakeholders to sort of agree and decide if we're to protect giraffe for the next 20, 50 years in a particular landscape, what are the core initiatives that we need to do? And we have these really engaging discussions, and we come up with a conservation action plan that outlines what the vision is. So for GCF, our main core theme, we like to say, is that we are a voice for giraffe, and we're already dedicated to securing a future for giraffe in the wild where they live with the local communities. So that's our main vision. So beyond conservation action plans, we're also involved in doing conservation translocations. We've introduced giraffe in the wild in places where they were locally extinct. And this is done mainly with local partners, especially government partners. We're involved in using technology to track giraffe or document their populations to see how they're doing, how infrastructure is impacting them, and which is really useful. And maybe we'll talk about that more at some point. We're also involved in enhancing the local capacity. I'm one of the beneficiaries of getting technical and financial support from the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, but we've also supported more than 100 students in Africa and beyond, where we've supported PhD students, masters, diploma level. Just depends on what the main research question is and how that data is going to impact conservation in the long term. We're also involved in supporting communities to monitor their local populations and generating data and sort of do like anti-poaching monitoring and all of these efforts, which have contributed in better understanding how many giraffe are in the wild and where they are. We strongly believe that, with this approach, we know for sure that we have the base database currently on how many giraffe are out there in the wild and where they are from our partnerships and the work that we've done.
Excellent. You mentioned it is the only NGO that is working for the giraffe species. Is that true?
So it's currently the only NGO that focuses on all four species of giraffe. So there are many other NGOs that work in very specific areas,
Okay.
but our main focus is quite broad, where we work with all four species. As I mentioned, we have partners in 19 of the 21 different African countries. So
Hmm.
that is to say that for us, partnership is at the core of the work that we do, where we try to, we know that resources are limited, but if we find the right partners, then obviously these resources can be stretched to have more impactful work rather than focus in, let's say one or two areas and where we know that we are going to spend a lot of money here, but the impact is going to be limited. So that's how we've generated quite a lot of information and data that has been used in designing these tools like the action plans, or maybe even working with partners to do transboundary conservation translocations, where we know a bit more now what's going on across the range, and which has been really, really useful.
Got it. Since you mentioned four species, would love to know what are those four species called?
Yeah, so this is a very, previously it used to be a very hot topic. That's because for the longest time, people used to assume that there's only one species of giraffe and nine subspecies. This has been, for the longest time, the standard and what the IUCN adopted. But many people started questioning this, because obviously giraffe, they don't all look the same. They occur in many different landscapes. And so there are theories out there that suggested that there could be more than one species of giraffe. So, sorry. So, as the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, we started working with many different partners, and we got DNA samples from across the range of giraffe across Africa, where we worked with our partners in Germany, Senckenberg Waldorf Museum, and this actually showed that genetically speaking, there are four distinct giraffe of giraffe. So there's the northern giraffe, which occurs, as the name indicates, mostly in northern and central Africa. So the northern giraffe has three subspecies. There's the West African giraffe, only found in Niger. There are none in zoos, so quite rare and one of the most endangered. There's the Kordofan giraffe, which occurs in Central Africa, so that's another subspecies of the northern giraffe. And lastly, there's the Nubian giraffe, which is found in Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan. And so those are the three subspecies of the northern giraffe. We then have the Maasai giraffe, which is found in Kenya and Tanzania. And then we have the reticulated giraffe, which is found mostly in Kenya and Ethiopia and Somalia as well. Lastly, we have the southern giraffe, which has two subspecies, being the Angolan giraffe and the South African giraffe. So those are now the new four species that we know. This is backed by science, and this was adopted by the IUCN as of 1 year ago, actually, because the announcement came out, I think it was on the 25th of August, around that time. So it's really quite interesting and really good to see that information being out there and widely accepted from the work that we've done.
Excellent. This is quite insightful. So it is as recent as last year.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, so I mean, the work that we did, it started. It took more than 10 years just to get the work adopted by the IUCN. Obviously, we were using it already because we believe in the sense that we were doing, and we also actually, this data was actually also supported by morphological data. We supported a postdoc student who looked at skull morphology. So he went around different countries and collected more than 500 skull samples and took a 3D scanner also to look at the skull morphology. And the skull morphology results merged with the DNA data. So even though we say that it's recently as last year, it took quite a long time, more than 10 years, collecting DNA samples, morphology data, and even looking at the code pattern. So a lot of it went into finally having IUCN accept the data. And also, the IUCN brings together lots of experts who are from different fields, and they looked at it and they said, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of science to back it up, and it's now the official position of the IUCN. And obviously, for us, that was quite important and impactful, because what the IUCN communicates, and I'm sure many conservationists know this, many policies and international policies are based off the IUCN classification. So for us, that was really good to see that now, instead of just having one blanket policy for 4 species, we can have now sort of tailor-made policies that reflect the conservation status of each of these 4 species, because they also face different threats.
Got it. And all the giraffes that are outside African region, they have all been relocated, translocated. Is that how it is?
Sorry, come again?
So when we see giraffes outside Africa, okay, in zoos or other sanctuaries, so they are not, because giraffes by its very nature are from Africa, right? So non-African regions, they don't have native
Yeah, yeah.
giraffes. Am I right?
Yeah, to the best of our knowledge, no, they don't. So all of those giraffes, they probably originated somewhere from Africa.
Okay.
I know previously, maybe in one of they probably had ancestors that were long extinct, but I think most of them are limited to Africa.
And are they also bred in other parts of the world?
I know that they occur in many different zoos, but I don't think there's any wild populations outside of Africa, to the best of
Got
my
it.
knowledge.
Got it. Excellent. And
Yeah.
help me understand. So, what are the biggest threats that giraffes suffer today? What are the biggest challenges that the species of giraffe have or encountering today?
So from what we've seen, I mean, many of the threats that giraffe face are usually human-induced. One of the biggest one, and this is going to be just broadly speaking, because if you do like a threat matrix, there are those that are going to come out, quite clearly. One of the biggest one, obviously, is habitat loss and fragmentation. That's the major one. I mean, currently, Africa has some of the fastest growing economies. So what that's going to do is going to drive up a lot of demand and pressure on land. So you have people buying up private land, and once they do, they put up fences. Fences are one of the biggest threats for giraffe, because they either divided the habitat, there's the fragmentation, and for giraffe, if you really think about their unique anatomy and physiology, if they get entangled in fences and there's no immediate response, the animals end up dying. And that's quite a big threat. We've seen places where you have one fence line and you have like 3 dead giraffe on one single fence line. And that's quite a big loss, because this is a big animal that is, really important for the ecosystem. You have low-hanging power lines. Many people want to have power in their places, but if the power lines are not installed correctly, giraffes are a quite tall animal. They come in contact with the power lines, they get electrocuted and die. Many people want to be connected with, tarmac road, highways. And once people get to the highways, they start driving fast. And when there is vehicle collisions, you lose the animal, but also you lose human life. That's quite another big threat. Beyond the habitat loss and fragmentation, obviously there's poaching and illegal hunting. That's really quite a big threat. From some of the studies that we've done here in Kenya, we worked with the Kenya Wildlife Service. We collected samples across many different areas, and we also looked at confiscation data. And we found that actually in Kenya, giraffe, and especially Maasai giraffe and reticulated giraffe, giraffe are the third most poached animal in Kenya. And you can imagine, for a country that has quite a large diversity of other antelopes and other mammals, and this is maybe especially in the case of for bushmeat. So you find that many people, or many poachers, let me put it like that, are looking for either, so the number one, that was tic-tics. These are small antelopes, easy to carry. Number 2 was zebra, and then the third one that came up were giraffe, which was quite surprising for us, but also interesting if you think about it, because with one animal you get a lot of meat, but still very sad.
So
And then the other threat.
So just for the
Sorry?
meat, they're getting poached.
Well, so that's another thing. Giraffes are a quite interesting animal. So because they occur widely across the continent, they have many different uses. So what we've seen here in Kenya, they get poached just for the meat. People, because it's a big animal, it's a good source of protein. The meat is edible. And this might surprise you, in many other places, giraffes might be hunted for just another part. In some parts in Central Africa, and this was documented in Chad and also some parts in CAR, Central African Republic, giraffes are hunted just for the tail. And you can imagine that's really sad for an animal that size. Poachers
Wow.
go for it just for the tail. And that's because the tail can be a symbol of power in some cultures. Or it can be used in dowry negotiations. And so that's quite sad to hunt such a big, massive animal just for the tail. In some places, there have been sort of rumors that giraffe bone and bone marrow can be used in traditional medicine. And so previously in some places, giraffes used to be hunted just for the bones. But in some of these places, the governments have done quite a good job in cracking down on this and sort of engaging the community in protecting these animals. In some places, it's just for the skin. So really quite diverse. Depending on where you are, giraffes are hunted for any different body part, which is quite sad because it's a really charismatic, big, beautiful animal.
Yeah, because it is giraffe is one animal that I know worldwide. It is one of the most loved animal. Okay.
Yes,
It
yeah,
is very,
yeah.
if you go, I mean, I've not been to Africa yet, but if you go to any zoos around the world, the moment you see a giraffe, the entire crowd and the children, they all throng there because it's the attention grabber, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, giraffes have always fascinated, the human imagination. You look at them. This is an
Yes,
animal that has, a very long neck, long legs, beautiful eyelashes, and
yes,
also has a calm demeanor. It's rarely
yes,
aggressive. It doesn't
yes,
show aggression, doesn't project aggression.
yes.
And it's quite interesting, even if you look at the virtual space. So there was a study that was done actually in 2018 by some researchers, and they interviewed some school kids, and they also interviewed about 4,000 people trying to document charismatic species. What do people call charismatic species?
Hmm.
And they looked at which animals people use in logos, which animals are depicted in Disney movies, those types of things. And giraffe were among the top 10 charismatic species worldwide, and that shows
Hmm.
really the appeal that they have. But unfortunately, in that same study, they found that actually about 60% of the respondents did not know the conservation status of giraffe and the threats that giraffe faced. So they ranked last among charismatic species about what people know about their conservation status, which is
Hmm.
quite sad, but also shows that we still have a lot of work in disseminating all the information that we have and also sharing with the public that giraffes are under threat. Yes, they're this cool looking animal, they're quite beautiful, but still many people might not know is that there are very few of them remaining in the wild, and we still need to do a lot of work to protect them.
So that's exactly why GCF should have its community on Wildlife Buzz, because some of these insights I don't think the community knows. Okay, so I'm gonna press you for building GCF's community for that. Okay, because this is really really insightful insights that I'm getting here. Okay, so any other misconceptions? So you said that the tail, okay, having a tail is a status symbol. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
any other misconceptions about giraffes and challenges?
I mean, yeah, there are many misconceptions out there about giraffe. One of the big one is usually that giraffes do not vocalize. Many people actually have never heard a giraffe vocalize, but I know some people working in zoos, they have heard a giraffe make some noises and grunt. But many people have never heard giraffe vocalize. Even myself, the first time I ever had a giraffe vocalize was in 2016, but this was a very, very special case where we were moving giraffes, and one giraffe fell, and people were trying to, get it up, and someone tried to prod it to stand up, and it, bellowed. It let out like a loud roar, like a lion. And I
Hmm.
was with people who had worked with giraffe for 20 years, 25 years, and everyone was stunned. They were just shocked because they had never heard a giraffe vocalize. So they do. But that also showed us that we know very little about giraffe, especially when it comes to communication. And I know I did get a question on communication in the Ask Me Anything session. But that's one area where we still need a lot of work. So if there are people who are specialists in wildlife communication, we'd love to see what they can come up with, because that's one of the biggest remaining mysteries. We don't know how giraffe communicate, but what we do know is that they make noise. So they're not completely silent. They have vocal cords and they do vocalize.
And they make noise out of aggression, or it need not be aggression.
So that's the fascinating thing. Rarely out of aggression, very rarely. I've been involved in many translocations. I've been involved in immobilizations, trying to fit on collars, and even when they are darted and they are running away scared, you'll never hear them make any noise. For people who've worked with other wildlife, you hear, like, whenever you see an animal that wants to express its displeasure or it's angry out of aggression, you can hear them growling, you can hear them roaring, you can hear zebras, making the noise that they make. You can even hear wildebeest with the noise that they make. But with giraffes, rarely anything. They're just always so chill, very calm. And it's quite fascinating to see. I've never seen a giraffe being aggressive, but obviously when we're trying to work with them, fitting collars, we're always very careful because they have a very little kick. So we know obviously that they'll try to kick, but we are always careful with that. But even when they're trying to kick, trying to stand up to flee and just go on with their own lives, they never make any noise. They just go on by their business, being very chill and calm, and very special animals.
Nice. So, of all the conservation efforts that you have done, do you have a story to share where a collaboration or a conservation effort that actually made a difference?
Yeah, for sure. There are many of them, but I think one of the most special that I would like to highlight maybe would be our work that we've done in Uganda with the Uganda Wildlife Authority. So the translocation that I mentioned, where we were moving giraffe and one giraffe fell, all that was part of something that we called Operation Trigger. And Operation Trigger, there are many series of them, but what the idea behind that was to work with the Uganda Wildlife Authority and expand the range and the numbers of giraffes in Uganda. So for context, giraffes in Uganda, they previously used to occur across the country, but by 2016, there were only, I believe, 2 viable populations. So one in a place called Murchison Falls National Park, and on the northern edge of the park. So the park is bisected in 2 by River Nile, but only the northern edge had a very large population. But by that time, I think there were about 1,500 giraffes remaining in Uganda, many of them in that one place. But in this singular place also, the government had discovered oil, and so they obviously wanted to drill for oil. And so what we did, we worked with them and said, look, there are many other parks where giraffes previously used to occur. Why can we not move giraffe across all these other places and work with you to secure the habitats, make sure that the habitats are looking great, and then briefly reintroduce giraffe into some of these areas so that at least we have, these populations spread across, and also people can have more opportunities to see giraffe in these other places, because it can also create many other different ideas for tourism and stuff like that. So in 2016, the first giraffes were moved from the northern bank of that park to the southern bank. So it involved moving giraffes just to the southern bank. It's the same ecosystem, though the southern area is a bit more denser and greener. And so, as you can understand, these involved catching giraffes, putting them in an observation area in a boma, and then putting giraffes on a truck, then from the truck on a ferry so that they cross River Nile, which was quite awesome to see and just witness that whole operation. Beyond that, we had other series of translocations where giraffes were moved to the northern edge of the country, where they were moved to Kidepo Valley National Park. I think at that point there were 3 giraffes, very few giraffes remaining in that park. And then, so by doing those series of translocations, the population has now grown. I think from the last estimate, there's now about 65 or 69 giraffes thereabout. There were also other translocations that were done to another park that's on the eastern edge of the country, which borders also Kenya. And now the population has grown to about 45 giraffes. So that reintroduction, we're bringing back giraffe into that park for the first time in many, many years, because they had been locally extinct. And now that population is thriving, and there were also some other giraffe moved further south And now there's about 70, I believe, giraffes in that park called Lake Mburo. So from this one large distinct population, there's now about 5 distinct populations that are viable and thriving, which just shows the impact of that work. And also that now with having these collaborations, we can now actually secure some habitats and also increase the range of giraffe, reintroduce them in places where they used to occur, and work with many partners to save giraffes.
Thank you so much. That was quite fascinating. You also mentioned about the role of technology. All right. Do you want to share if there has been some adoption of technologies that has helped you in your conservation work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this day and time, I don't think I can understate, how important technology is, especially in rapidly changing landscapes. Uh, I mean, here in Kenya, we have one of the fastest growing economies, and the landscapes are quickly changing. I mean, just myself having grown up here, I can see how many places are changing with fences coming up, buildings coming up. And one of the most important questions that we need to always answer is how are wildlife moving in these changing landscapes? And that's really important, because what many people may not usually understand is that, yes, people might assume that because there are many wildlife, national parks, that animals are always in national parks. No, they're not. They're always roaming in and out of national parks. And because we have a growing human population, then they are interacting quite a lot with human beings. So we need to know where are wildlife spending a lot of their time, which are these core habitats where the wildlife are, and how can we protect them. So we've done quite a lot of work in using technology. For instance, so we've done surveys using photographic identification, pattern recognition software, where we take photos of giraffe and then we identify them. And by combining these with GPS points, at least we can see where we saw giraffe and where they were, and how can are they spending a lot of time here or just moving to other areas. What this does, it gives us a slight indication of where animals are likely to be. And this is important because, for instance, in Kenya, reticulated giraffe, approximately, I believe about 95% of them are found in community land. So very few of them occur in national parks. And that's important. Now, photos will only tell us where we saw giraffes at a particular point in time. So we needed to go beyond that. What we've also been doing is using now GPS tracking software, GPS satellite trackers. And this now tells us how they are moving and where they are moving, and whether they are interacting with infrastructure that comes up in these spaces. So we've put up these trackers through our initiative called Trigger Tracker. And this allows us to see now the exact tracks that animals are using. And this can then help us identify these corridors, places where maybe fences might not be a good idea, because we can always see an animal trying to cross, and maybe we say, okay, we work with the government to try and discuss with the landowners that maybe this might not be a good idea. Or maybe we see animals keep crossing at a certain point, and then we work with the government to say, maybe we need to think about what can we do in this area to sort of reduce chances of, collisions with vehicle. And so we've provided a lot of data that we've shared with the government, because they are ultimately the decision makers. And GPS tracking has been really useful for us, because we've seen in many places, if the resources are there, you find that animals might tend to stay in one place. But then if the habitat is disturbed and then the resources are not there, they move quite a lot of, they cover quite great distances. And this is important to know, because if you want to conserve wildlife, then you need to know how much space do they need, and how is this going to impact, the needs of human beings in the long term, because conservation is ultimately going to be about coexistence with wildlife. That's just the reality.
Excellent. Very fascinating. Just curious, how many, in numbers, how many giraffes are living today?
So to the best of our knowledge, we've just compiled the State of Giraffe report, which came out last year on World Giraffe Day, which is June 21st. We released a report which showed that at least there's about 140,000 giraffes remaining in the wild. So that's just the number that we know in Africa. I don't know how many giraffes are currently in zoos, but the number that we work with is 140,000 giraffes remaining in Africa. For context, that's a very small number because that's one giraffe for about every 4 or 5 elephants. So you can see that it's not quite a big number. There are way many elephants than giraffes in Africa. And that's because they historically they declined quite significantly. We lost many of them due to various sources that we talked about earlier. It could be poaching, disease. All this had a great impact on giraffe, and they're a long-living animal, so they live for about 30 years, and they're still recovering. What we've seen is that initially giraffes used to occur in many places, but they lost their range and they lost their numbers. We know that since the 1970s, giraffes have gone locally extinct in 7 African countries, but they're slowly rebounding. But they're still just about 140,000 remaining. It's not a lot, but with our partners, we are doing quite a bit to help the populations recover. We've reintroduced giraffes in areas where they were previously extinct, and this is helping the population do well.
And this 140,000, is this growing or stagnant or declining? What is the trend now?
For the most part, it's a positive trend. At least from the work that we've done, we are finding more giraffes than they were initially were there. We are seeing numbers rebound. We are at least better documenting giraffes in places where we thought maybe they were extinct. But there are still some important gaps that are yet to be filled. For instance, no consistent studies have been done in Somalia, Ethiopia, Central African republics. These are some of the areas where we know there's giraffes, but doing studies there can be a bit challenging. And so that has helped us. What has helped those numbers sort of go up is this increased documentation accurately of where giraffes are. But also we've seen populations that, by doing these conservation translocations, we are helping sort of the numbers grow. And this, it's also been documented in Kenya, where the Kenya Wildlife Service did a lot of translocations and reintroducing giraffes in areas where they were previously not. And by doing that, and especially putting them in places where the conditions are really good, you see the population start to increase and do really well. So that's what has been happening in the past few years.
Excellent. And here is the last question for our audience around the world, many of whom may have never seen a wild giraffe. Is there something in their little way that they can do to genuinely contribute to giraffe conservation?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. A journey of 1,000 steps starts with a single step. That's what the wise man said. And I think what people can do, obviously, for us, we do think that the biggest thing is to share as much as you know, because you never know who that might impact. It might generate interest in someone, might be just, your neighbor. It might also be a policymaker, because people do not have the information. As I mentioned earlier, even us as researchers, we just are still learning things. So if you find an interesting fact when it comes to giraffe, share that information. It doesn't need you to travel to see giraffe in the wild, but if you have that interest and you're learning things, keep sharing the information, because you never know who it might reach. I'll give a good example. A few years ago, there was that image of giraffe that was stuck in a well and died from being stuck in mud that was put up by BBC. And that went viral across the world. And it created this image and interest for people to learning about the impacts of climate change on other wildlife and giraffe. And that was a powerful thing, because it got a lot of support for communities who are trying to, get water for their animals. And that went a long way. Similarly, I think, was it a year or 2 ago, there was also that photo of giraffe in the Masai Mara that was standing in the rain. That also went really viral. It was a photo taken by a video, that was taken by a tourist. And people started wondering, actually, we've never thought about, where giraffe go when it rains. And that generated a lot of interest on giraffe. And we even got some questions from people who were like, actually, what happens when it's raining quite a lot? Where do giraffe go? And we were like, I mean, yeah, they live in the wild, they're used to it, but at least there was that interest. Because then what usually happens when there's this interest and people start learning about giraffes, they now start asking questions, and then ultimately they start also donating, and those resources go a long way in helping, efforts on the ground. Because, and I'm sure many conservationists will know this, conservation can be expensive. It's not an income generating enterprise. It's usually an investment in wildlife and also communities and people for the use of future generations. And so for this to be really successful, you need the funding.
Exactly, and it's human duty, okay, because we are all sharing the same space, and these people do not have any powers, okay. So humans have the power, so it is our duty to conserve them. It's a duty to donate.
Exactly.
So I absolutely, I was hoping to have a 20-25 minutes conversation, but I was so intrigued to know everything about giraffe. It went 40 minutes conversation, but we are going to do our bit and take bits and pieces of very interesting snippets, and we are going to promote it. And as I said, I think if we can get all the passionate giraffe conservationists together into the GCF community, that would also be a great step forward. So let's have a conversation around that as well. Okay, with that, Arthur, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to maybe having you again in the future to talk about what more is happening in the giraffe conservation space, right?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I can talk about giraffe all day, so I do appreciate even the 25 or even 40 minutes. It's usually good. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arthur.